We got the crew. There's a few more here joining. Amazing. Awesome. Welcome, Dan. Seeing some familiar epic faces here. Oh yeah, we got a squad. It's gonna be good. Got an iPhone joining as well.
What chance is really going after it with I think this is the fifth time of accepting his AI.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like there's already one.
I
I'm not
think
sure.
yeah, he might be trying to and maybe he can pop on and yeah, he might be resetting it just to trying to mess with
Yeah.
the settings or something.
Awesome. Well, you let me know, Dave, and then I'm ready when you are. So
Yeah, it's a super fun concept with all the AIs, and this is one of the things that we strongly promote in our company is an AI first approach. But it's kind of funny as almost like the new cell phone of the era of distractions of little notifications popping up.
yep. Yes, indeed.
All right, I would say yeah, let's
We're
get
ready
rocking
to
and rolling.
kick it off. Awesome. Okay. Let me see if I can X out of this. And I hope everybody can hear me. If you're driving, then don't answer this question or do anything. But if you can hear me, maybe just put a one in the chat room so I know that you guys are actually listening so we don't, or hold your hand up. That's awesome. Thanks, Dave or Dan. Making sure you guys can hear. Okay, so we got audio. Fantastic. And also, do you see people joining? Dave, can you let them?
Yeah.
Okay, I see another, yeah, someone else joining here. Awesome. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to kick it off. I know there may be some that'll be joining, but just really excited that everybody took some time out of your amazingly busy days. No doubt it's Friday. So we're going to jump right in to a really insightful conversation and then a cool opportunity to engage even more. I'm really excited to, well, one, introduce Dr. Dave. Very briefly, my name's Jeremy, as you can see on the Zoom. And I've been knowing Dave for several years now. He's popped on my radar more recently as I'm going through a health journey myself. About 3 months ago, started to really take on my own health data. And I was at the time 265 pounds and carrying a lot of extra weight. And so with the support of Dave and the things that we talk about and getting, or we'll get in today, I've been able to, gosh, release 40 pounds. I'm, feeling amazing and still on the path, but it's because I've been able to kind of get a better understanding of like, what is my body actually telling me? And so super excited. I see most of you are sitting down, which is great because I was going to invite you to be seated because if you don't know who Dr. Dave is, let me just share a couple of things about this amazing human being. A true visionary in the world of digital health and human performance, no doubt about it. Buckle up because I'm about to introduce to you a man who is not just predicting the future of health and wellness, he's actively creating it. Dr. Dave is many things, a maverick, 3 decades of obsession in the health and wellness space. He's a father, a husband, and this isn't just like any, medical practitioner, folks. We're talking about a true pioneer who has treated well over 10,000 patients and revolutionized healthcare delivery at every turn. So picture this. In 2008, while most of us were just getting used to the smartphones, Dr. Dave was already coaching athletes using digital health devices. Fast forward to 2019, and he's founding an AI and machine learning based digital health corporation. So, talk about being ahead of the curve. This is a guy that every time I talk to Dr. Dave, he's already like, he's in the future and coming, he's making it real. It's incredible. There's actually a little bit more. And Dave is not just about treating illness. This human being is about optimizing human potential. He's the brains behind digital empathy, which is a groundbreaking way to connect your experiences with your biometrics, to give you personalized, meaningful insights and actual direction. So it's like having a health GPS for your body and your mind. His track record, you might wonder, who the heck's Dr. Dave? Well, let me just flex a little bit of him. There's a lot more. He built a sports medicine empire. He became the first chiropractor in Wisconsin to be recognized in a federally qualified hospital. He even helped major corporations slash their premiums by a few $1 million. No big deal. And then in terms of credentials, I mean, this man is, as you will see, he's a walking encyclopedia of health expertise, from clinical exercise, physiology, to genetic and epigenetic coaching, from wilderness medicine to medical bike fitting. I mean, if it's about optimizing human performance, this man has mastered it. So here's the kicker. He's also not content with the status quo. Dr. Dave is on a mission to usher a new age of digital health. And so in an age where we move from information overload, right, to this laser focused personalization, in an age where technology doesn't complicate our lives, but simplifies them, right, allowing us to focus on living our best life and actually sharing that with others. So, ladies and gentlemen, prepare to have your minds blown and your futures brightened. It's my absolute deepest honor to introduce you to a man who is redefining what's possible in health and wellness. Dr. Dave, it's all yours.
Thank you. I feel like I should be walking out on a stage right now. That was so amazing. I feel like the crowd is cheering for me in my little podcast studio here.
Absolutely.
That's so, yes, this is all about creating the future, and this whole perspective journey here. I'm so excited to share with everyone because it's been working in the background for a very long time. I've been doing this individually with people, and it's exciting to be in this type of environment again. It's been a few years since I've started publicly sharing all of the things that I've been working on and how we actually use data and how do we get to that peak performance. So without further ado, let's jump in. Thank you so much for being here. Definitely excited for everyone that's on the call. And I'm actually, I was telling Jeremy this beforehand. I thrive when people ask questions. This is an interactive thing. This is not general information spewing at you. This is an interactive thing. So at the end, we will definitely have lots of time for question and answers, and I will definitely stay on as long as it takes. I've even stayed on these things an hour past the end of the thing to help people, because that is my true mission in my life, is really that North Star of helping as many people as I can. So we're all here to learn how to master our health. And my health actually started, the reason why this is so unique is my health journey actually started when I decided to drive off the road. And for a little bit of context around this, I had already started achieving all of my dreams in business, but something was happening to me physically and mentally that I did not understand. I ended up having a deep, dark depression that I didn't know that I was dealing with. And one day on my way to work, I decided that I was going to drive off the road. And the justification in my head was that if I just roll my car a little bit and I only injure myself a little bit, then I don't have to show up for work for a while. And it was this really interesting thought that I was so disassociated at the time that I didn't even realize what I was doing until I hit the rumble strips on the side of the road. And it was like a jolt of lightning that had hit me of, wow, what am I doing? Stop. And I just pulled over onto the side of the road and just had like an emotional breakdown. And it was the start of my journey when I realized for the first time in my life that I probably needed help with something, because previous to that, I had no context that my health was starting to go down other than a little bit of low energy and a little bit of low grade inflammation. So that's the start of my journey that I'll get into a little bit. But here's my promise to you guys that you're going to take out of this as, like I said, I hate spewing information at people. I believe that the past 20 years, we've had Google, the amount of information that's out there. It's unreal that we have the highest amount of information available at our fingertips, and yet obesity rates have more than doubled in the past 20 years. Chronic disease has more than doubled in the past 20 years. And the society as a whole really is not getting healthier, except for a small select few percentage of the population of people who are really investing into their health. And so what does this mean? It means generic information isn't right for us. Personalized information is right for us. So out of this, you're going to understand how to find out if something is working for you or not. That's the whole point of data. You're going to be able to take immediate action to have more energy. Like literally the day of, I've had people regain 2 hours of sleep after this. And you're going to understand how to monitor the two key metrics from your wearable device, because these things can be confusing if you don't know what you're looking at. And so that's the whole goal of today. And just quick, like I said, one of my friends who we helped through with these types of programs doubled his sleep in a very short amount of time because he figured out what worked for him. And so just a little testimonial of using data can be extremely powerful, and a little bit of foreshadowing. This is deep sleep, not overall sleep, in which we're going to get into on this call today. So who am I? Obviously, we had this amazing intro in the beginning. Yes, I had 30 years experience. I've got over 10,000 patients underneath my belt. But the cool stuff, the dreams that I had was working with Olympic athletes and pro athletes. I was always into sports medicine. I was always into sports performance. I was personally a football player as well that played in a national championship. But I worked with the UW Badgers rugby team. I worked with the men's rugby team. I've been in the pits of Indy cars and NASCARs. I've helped Olympic athletes. The bottom picture here is a person who had come back from being paralyzed from his legs down to winning the gold medal in the masters class of speed skating. So like all of these different aspects I hit as a career goal. It all started kind of crumbling, however, and I had a self-destructive path. And so this stuff is extremely passionate to me on what this has the capabilities of doing. And it also is the framework of why I turned so different from the medical establishment. So my path is this path of self-destruction. I started off with low energy and low inflammation. That's when I was at that point where I realized that I needed help and I was driving off the side of the road. So I started with all the typical stuff, the self-help books, the Tony Robbins types of things, and realized quickly like I didn't need that. So I dove into the world of paleo had just been released. I was also low on testosterone and had a whole bunch of other medical issues that we were addressing, and none of it seemed to work. So 6 months down the road of doing all these advanced protocols, and I felt like I was getting worse. So in my mind, I was like, okay, maybe it's not what I was thinking. Maybe I'm just lazy. So I signed up to do a half Ironman, and I trained for 6 months to do a half Ironman. And through that process, actually continued to get worse. I actually didn't see any success. Now, I was able to complete the half Ironman. It was really cool to do. But at the end of it, I felt like I was worse off. And so I went down another functional medicine rabbit hole, and I was trying different detoxes and liver cleanses and you name it, different protocols. I was just clawing at anything. All of the different doctors that I was connected to, probably well over 30 or 40 doctors that I consulted with that I knew out of my friend group. And I continued to get worse to the point where at one point my abdomen teared and I was like unable to walk for 3 days. My teeth started falling out. I lost four of my teeth. They just literally cracked in half and fell out. My bones started breaking. As a chiropractor, I was working on someone's neck and my finger snapped in half. And so that continued to just continually destroy me. And I ultimately was severely depressed and disconnected. And during this whole thing, I actually had no perspective. I had no formal diagnosis. The medical system had failed me from a traditional standpoint. And I was lost without anything. I didn't know where to turn. I had no support. And so the last straw was when the last time that I broke a bone. So I broke my finger, and then a month later, my elbow broke because I had to keep working. And it just got to the point where, okay, we cleaned house. We ended up going through a process and having to figure out what am I going to do with my life? I can't do this stuff anymore. And so we had to declare bankruptcy and let it all go. We definitely made the decision to go through that process and figure it out from there, is essentially. And what I learned through this whole process is what I now call an energy bucket. This energy bucket is an aspect of when your bucket is on full, these are the people that are, hitting those dreams. They're hitting all that vitality stuff. These are the people we're jealous of like, how are you doing that? When your bucket's on empty, this is when you don't want to wake up in the morning. This is when you don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to show up at work. Everything is a drag. Everything is a big aspect in your brain, and you get angry, you get frustrated. It's the kick the dog syndrome of something happens in your life and for some reason you get mad at your dog as if the dog was the fault. That is a good sign that your energy bucket is on low. And I started creating my own healing process through this energy bucket concept that sidestepped the medical community. There's a lot of different things that we'll get into. This is actually the framework that we're going to go into. Once you understand your data, this is the framework that we can actually apply to our data to learn how to fill our energy bucket, fill the plugs, fill the holes, and actually get to where we want to go. But I'm back. So this was all back in 2017 when things went at my lowest. And as my counterweight, I still didn't have a diagnosis at that time. I still didn't understand what was going on. We thought I had some sort of rare cancer, but we couldn't figure it out. So I said, we need to take a journey. And this bus here is a home that I created for my family. So it was my wife and my two kids. They were 5 and 6 at the time. We converted the school bus into a tiny home and we traveled the country for a year. We actually went working from farm to farm, as one of the thought processes that I had was, how can I learn the agricultural system to see why our food system was not having any nutrition? And I learned a lot about farming practices and agriculture and corporate farming and all of those sorts of things. But now I'm at the point where I go on epic adventures all the time. This is a picture of me in Idaho doing whitewater rafting for 10 days down the Salmon. I've done 10-day hikes through national forests. I've climbed mountains. I started a podcast. I started the AI company in 2019. I've been to Silicon Valley. I won a bunch of awards in business for that. And now I know how to take care of myself. I know how to fill my bucket, and I'm actually proud to say I'm in the final stages of my journey of I've been training for 1 year now. This coming October, I'm running my first 100-mile ultra race as my own personal goal to really feel like, man, I'm alive and I'm well and I'm doing everything that I want to be doing. So look forward to just October seeing my journey of me completing my 100 miles, hopefully. So, as promised, I do want to get into the two key metrics that everyone can track using any kind of fitness tracker. And I will say there was quite a few questions in uh, um, the pre-form that people filled out about which fitness tracker we should use. And the answer is very easy, the one that works best for you. They are all starting to become, at a standard level where they're all starting to collect data. But the biggest point is, what is the easiest way for you, for your cost point and form factor, to start collecting this data? It's just super important to start to have this awareness. Everyone should have some sort of digital health tracker, and it doesn't matter where it's coming from. We just have to start with something so that we can actually understand where we're at and how to move forward with things. And that's what we're going to go over today. So resting heart rate. Leonardo da Vinci is one of my heroes of history. Fun side story is 450 years before the invention of MRI and CT scan, he was the first person to describe the thought process of blood flow through the heart as like a river and turbulent. And everyone called him crazy for 450 years. They thought that that was a stupid concept, that the valves actually worked off of turbulence and flow. And turns out in 1950s, we confirmed his thought process by MRI and CT scan, was able to see the blood flow through the heart. So resting heart rate, that was my little sidetrack of my fun tidbit for the day. Resting heart rate is an extremely important metric that we can track, that this is the state of our body that when we're relaxed or excited during sleep. And so the nighttime resting heart rate is a great indicator of what our body is trying to struggle with. It is not the problem in itself. It is an indicator light. It's like a check engine warning light. It's not the actual problem that's going on. But let's say we're fighting sickness, or we're fighting some anxiety, or we have some business deal going through. Our resting heart rate is going to elevate at night, and we can pay attention to these things on a daily basis. So what can you guys do to actually know the daily versus the longitudinal? And I'm going to harp on this whole aspect. We have to be able to dive into your data, and some of the devices have this and some of the devices don't. This is my own personal portal that I call my Pi portal. So it's the personal insight engine that I have. And this is how I do my coaching with my clients. It allows all this data to come in, and for you, and you can look at your cell phone, whatever app that you may have. We want to get at what is your daily resting heart rate, and then what is your actual longitudinal average heart rate, resting heart rate. And so with a few clicks of a button on here, you may have to do some actual math of a 7-day average or a 14-day average. But in this case, in my report here, you can see the dotted blue line for my resting heart rate is at around 55. And this is a baseline for me. And now you can see the filled in line is the day-to-day differences that I actually have in my resting heart rate. So the ability to match these two numbers to know that my baseline on average is around 55 right now is important. That on a night that I do have a 58 resting heart rate, is that a problem for me or is it not a problem for me? And these are the ability to allow us to see where trends are going. This actually allows us to figure out if we're getting sick before we actually feel sick. Our resting heart rate will actually start to increase before we actually feel symptoms a lot of times. And so just monitoring it this way gives us this real-time aspect of understanding where we're at on a daily basis, and then what to do about it. And I'll get a little bit more in depth once we get through all of the different metrics. I'll teach you how to put it all together. This is a chart produced by Whoop. Whoop is one of those companies that has a lot of data, and they do a lot of research, and they publish a lot of it. And the top section here is for men. The bottom section here is for females. And what you need to do is you take your average line. So mine was 55. And you find your age in this chart, and then you can figure out where you're at as far as the quality of your resting heart rate. And the reason why I like this chart way better than the average like medical chart is most of the times they'll just go, oh, if you're 45, they're going to look at it as 68 to 76 is a normal, and they're not going to tell you anything else about it. However, we know through working with, thousands and tens of thousands of people through all these different digital health devices, that we can start to fraction out based off of VO2 max and all sorts of other conditions where we're at. And so figure out where you're at on the chart, figure out where you want to be as a person, and we'll talk about how to get actually these numbers to move in the right direction. But this is a great self-assessment. So for me right now, I'm turning 45 this year, doing the run on my 45th birthday, actually. And I'm right in that range of very good to athlete. I'm trying to push myself into the athletic framework of this, because for me, that is a goal that I have for my longevity. Just in general is the closer to very good or above average you are, it's going to add years of health span to your life. It's going to add years of lifespan potentially to your life. And this is just an overall health metric that you can pay attention to.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
Quick question from Kevin. He's asking, is that resting heart rate while sleeping or during the day?
It's the sleeping one. Yep.
Good question, Kevin. Thank you.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, and that's the big difference. Your average resting heart rate when you're during the day is going to be much higher, because you're active. Even the act of sitting up actually changes your heart rate. So when we're lying down versus sitting versus standing, we have different heart rates and different blood pressures in each of those different things. So the resting heart rate is taken at night when you're at sleep for that reason, that we can get a really good, reliable, like, this is where your body is at from a relaxed standpoint.
Is
And
there Dan asked the question, is there a difference between the top and bottom chart on the resting heart rate chart?
Yep. So the top is men, the bottom is females. Yep.
Good question, Dan. Thanks. Kevin had the same question. Okay, great.
Yeah. Sorry. I guess I realized I could have uh, added those words onto the screen.
All worry, no good. All worries. No.
Yeah, no, we're good. This is what I love about this. This is that I love chatting, and I love I love this to be interactive. So um here's one of the fun things. So I've been coaching people a very long time around metrics, and two of the biggest things that I see around sleep is that people wake up, they feel great, and they look at their score and it's a crappy score, and they go, oh, well, that's interesting. Or in the flip side is they feel like crap, but their sleep score was great, and they're like, what the heck? How can that be? And it's because a lot of these companies, they all try to culminate down into one sleep score. And every company has a different algorithm to actually produce that sleep score, which some of it take into resting heart rate, some of them take into the deep sleep, REM sleep. There's all these different factors that they try to get you into that one generalized score. And I'm going to make the case here that you can actually do your own looking into your own data here with your deep sleep to REM sleep ratio. This is a number that is extremely important. It has emerged through science in the past 10 years as one of the key factors of it's actually, well, we'll get into it, but it's actually way more important than just total sleep and is much more relevant to the quality of sleep. So just for a side note, deep sleep and REM sleep are both having their health benefits as far as memory processing. There's a lot of like REM sleep correlation that if you're missing out on your REM sleep, you're more depressed, you're suicidal. Kids who are missing out on their REM sleep are actually 600% increased suicide rates. And this is the scary thing. This is actually one of the reasons why I homeschool is that I let my kids sleep in, because during the ages from 10 essentially to 15, when their sleep cycles get all crazy and they end up staying up really late, like we all did this as a kid, if they miss out on the back end of their sleep, they are much more depressed, they're groggy, they can't retain information, all of those sorts of things. So we, as our kids go through the different struggles of sleeping, we let them sleep in because we know that the REM sleep is so important for their brain health that it's way more important than trying to get to an event or a class in the morning. Now, obviously, there's a few times where we make them do that, but for the most part, it's a thing that we really pride ourselves on. And so these are two really important metrics in our health to be aware of. And it's the same concept. We have to know what our baseline is. We have to know what our regular number is, and we have to know what our daily is. So this was actually, it's kind of funny, the August 1st to August 6th week, we'll talk about this a little bit later. I was actually in not the best mindset of my sleep had been really out of whack in the past couple of weeks. I've been dealing, my bucket had been emptied this summer because of a death in the family. I was doing some off-grid hiking through the mountains, and I was reaching peak training. All these things had come together of like creating a huge amount of stress in my body, and I hadn't been sleeping all that well. So you can see my average had lowered quite a bit. You can't see my previous, but it's right around that 59 minutes of deep sleep that I was getting on average. But you can see the trend in the line, and we'll get to that then in a little bit. We do the same thing with our REM sleep. Our REM sleep, we find that baseline, and we can find the daily so that we can compare and contrast. And where the magic actually starts to happen is understanding two big concepts. The brief, easy thing so that you guys don't have to worry about becoming an expert is if you look on the right-hand side of this, of the cycles, where there's the cycle 1 through the cycle 5, in general, a majority of the population, their genetic clock, their epigenetic situation is we normally go to bed around 10 and sleep until about 6. Average person. There are some people who are late clocks and there are some people who are early clocks, but we're not going to get into that. And so for the majority of people, 2 o'clock is a time frame that you need to be familiar with, that a majority of your deep sleep, when you look at your Garmin or your Whoop or any of that type of stuff, and you look at your sleep pattern, a majority of your deep sleep should be before 2 o'clock, and a majority of your REM sleep should be after 2 o'clock. These are the normal cycles that happen. And so as a quick coaching thing that I do is just having that awareness of that. Okay, did I get my deep sleep before 2 o'clock? Did I get my REM sleep after 2 o'clock? You'll find that if you go out on a night drinking, you're going to lose the back half of your sleep. You're going to lose your REM. If you take sleep aids, if you take, well, I won't mention actual drug names, but cold and flu things, you'll miss out on your REM sleep. And so you can actually see day-to-day differences on how different things affect you. You can also do this with supplements to increase your deep sleep or increase your REM sleep. So that's why it's important to know this cycle. The second big component is that on average, your REM sleep should be slightly more than your deep sleep, and it should be in a ratio of 20 to 25% of your total sleep should be REM, and 10 to 20% should be deep sleep. Now, I obviously, as a peak performance type of person, prefer to see those numbers up a little bit higher because then we know that the body is flushing out the immune cells in our brain. We're refreshing for the next day. We're adding storage. We're adding cognitive ability. As founders, CEOs, and high performers, if we're missing out on the cycling of these deep sleep to REM sleep, we're actually decreasing performance of cognitive problem solving, which then puts us more back into the primal brain, which then makes us more angry, quick decision, bad decision type of people. So when we get up into that upper ranges of 20% deep sleep and 25% REM sleep, we're much happier campers and we can solve problems at a much better level. Yeah.
Couple questions here. The Honorable Kelly Bajeron asks, what is the difference between deep sleep and REM sleep? I thought they were close to the same.
Yeah, so there's actually lots of different types of sleep. They're the waves that happen in our brain. So this is a function that our brain goes through while we're asleep to do the different restorative processes. So some of them are responsible for forming new memories. Some of them are responsible for actually saving our memories. We know that there's a strong link that when we miss out on REM sleep, we're statistically way more likely to suffer from dementia and Alzheimer's because there's an aspect of there's a couple of people who are experts in this particular sleep study. They describe it as imagine every night a flood comes through New York City and cleans all of the streets. And if that flood doesn't happen, the streets stay dirty. And that's actually one of the foundations of why we start to get brain fog, why we start to get dementia, why we start to get Alzheimer's, all of those sorts of things. So these are vitally important processes that happen in our brain that really cool stuff. Like you can put a microphone up and you can actually hear a wave formation start to sound. There's all sorts of electrical circuits that start zipping back and forth. It's a really cool process when we sleep. So that's the importance of the overall difference between deep sleep, REM sleep. And just as a side note, since you're asking questions, we actually do go through micro awakenings. On average, 4, 5, 6 of them is normal for people, where we actually come up out of sleep, but we don't fully wake up. And these transitional processes, if we keep that awareness of it, we can start to help us figure out where we're at with things. It's also the natural state of if you can start to, there's all sorts of alarm clocks and things like that that are coming out, that when you start to go through your cycle and say you're on cycle 5 and you're hitting that little red peak as you're coming out into your micro awakening into the N1 phase, the alarm clock will go off at that time because your brain is actually ready to wake up at that point. Versus if you have your alarm clock set when you're in the middle of your REM cycle, unintentionally, you don't know what your brain is actually doing. You're just wanting to get up at 6 and that'll wake you up. And that's when you feel super groggy. And so there's a lot of biohacking devices that are coming out that actually have this awareness that your alarm clock will wait within a 10 to 15 minute window to wait for you to get to that micro awakening stage before it wakes you up. So some really cool things coming down the road for people.
Another question from Joe. Is melatonin okay to take not to affect REM sleep?
Yeah, so this is interesting. I will I will cover that when I look at the comparative analysis. I just got done with my melatonin cycle that I just did. Um, Suffice to say, there is all sorts of things that, because I want this to be personalized to you, my encouragement is you do 2 weeks without melatonin, and then you do 2 weeks with melatonin of whatever dosing you want to do. And you look at your data. And that way you know specifically for you, because everything is a percentage in reality. Like if we're being honest with people, not everyone reacts the same to things. That's why there's so much diversity in supplementation and medications and reactions to things. And so the whole point of this conversation is to do your own self-experiment to see if that melatonin is actually working for you. There's also other things like magnesium glycinate, magnesium threonate, passion flower, lavender. There's all these chemicals around us that can affect our deep sleep to REM sleep ratio. And we just need to figure out which one actually works best for us. And we'll actually get into that. That's part of the energy bucket. So you're just beating me to the punch. But great questions. Was that it from the chat? Yep, perfect. All right, got the 2 thumbs up. So now a lot of people that I work with, they go, great, now what? And this is entering the energy bucket. So you, like I said, you guys are beating me to the punch, and I love it. This is that means people are hungry for this. So the energy bucket, like I said, is that, if it's full, we're vibrant, we're full of life. If it's empty, we're not doing too good. And so the whole goal of this is, how do we figure out the holes in our energy bucket? And one of the things is that I hate the description of pillars of health, because it's such a stationary statement that has no relevance to anyone. The reason why I love the bucket thought process is because we're constantly changing things in our life to put inputs of water into the bucket, and things are constantly getting drained out of our bucket. It's very much a dynamic thing, and everything affects the other stuff. And this is not enough people talk about this. This is one of my passions, is that when we look at the energy bucket in this framework that I've created here, these 6 categories: sleep, fuel, movement, environment, nerves, and mindset, is that, let's just say we're trying to improve our sleep. And uh, if we go around the wheel and think about this, our food can affect our sleep, right? So if we get acid reflux, that's definitely going to keep us up. Uh, there's really lots of solid research of timing of food, when we eat our protein, when we eat our fats, intermittent fasting, all of those things can affect our sleep. Our movement affects our sleep, right? If we get exercise in the morning or if we get exercise at night, what works best for our body? Are we a cardio type of person, or are we a lifting type of person? Our environment, I actually have a great story about this, in that we had our bedroom in our basement of one of my houses that I had, and we had no idea black mold was actually forming in the wall behind our headboard. And for 2 months, we started massively losing sleep, and we started getting swollen nodes around our lymph nodes, and we just thought we were getting sick, until one day it just got so bad, and then suddenly the black mold came through the wall and we could see it. So that's an environmental thing. There's mold, there's air quality, there's temperature, there's all those sorts of things around us that affect our sleep. Our nervous system affects our sleep. So are we a nose breather? Are we a mouth breather? Are we in a stressful situation? This a lot has to do, the indicator of that resting heart rate has to do with our nervous system. So when our resting heart rate is higher, that means our nervous system is more spasmodic. It means that it's more excited. Mindset, obviously, we know this, right? If we're stressed about something, we tend to lose sleep. There's all sorts of mitigation techniques. So anxiety, depression, things of that nature. There's work-life balance. There's all these things that go into the mindset category that's all going to affect the sleep. So that's just one example of how everything fixes, or it puts together everything else. And so we can't just focus on one thing. We have to understand that this is an interconnected thing. So how do you fill your energy bucket? This is the beauty of why everyone, well, hopefully everyone, if you didn't, you can go back and take the intake form. But this is why you did those little questionnaires when you signed up for the webinar. If you didn't get it, it'll be resent out to you. Don't worry, don't fret. This is all going to be coming to you. But you take your lowest number, and that is most likely where most of the holes in your bucket is. And then you can pick 1 to 3 habits in that category. So if I'm trying to work on my health and I see that my sleep is really low, I can pick 1 to 3 habits in the sleep category. And you can go out and you can find these across the internet. You can, anything that you've heard of, you can ask your friends. I'll be giving you a guide with some of the top tips and tactics. But basically, you pick these habits. If you're an intermediate person, like you've experienced health and wellness before, maybe you work out on a regular basis, you can pick your 2 lowest categories and pick up to 6 habits to change at a time. And then if you're advanced, if you're a biohacker like me, I've been doing this for 30 years. I started off when I was in 4th grade biohacking. And so I'm used to making massive changes and massive landslide changes at a time, and I have no issues with changing my habits because of that. I can change up to 9 habits at a time. So if you're an advanced category, you can pick up to 9 routines that you want to focus on at a time. And so just a few examples in the sleep category of habits that you can pick from. Like I said, if you're a beginner, going to bed, believe it or not, statistically, out of all of the things that I'm going to talk about, this number 1A here is probably the most reliable way to get better sleep, is to literally go to bed 7 days out of the week, go to bed at the same time. Your sleep rhythm, there's a huge amount of rhythm in our body, and just getting to bed at the exact same time, or at least having the routine to get into bed at the same time, will massively change your sleep categories.
Quick question.
Yes.
Dan asks, you mentioned earlier the optimal deep sleep to REM ratio. The last slide or last couple slides showed us close to a 1-to-1 over time over the
It's
course of the night. Is that the ratio we're looking for?
yeah, so it's at 20 to 25% of your REM and 10 to 20% of your sleep. You're going to have your baseline of your ratio. So thank you. I think I forgot to say that aspect. You're just going to keep track of, like, you can put this into an Excel sheet, or in our personal Pi portal. You just want to keep track of that baseline, as you want to be in consistently in that, and then pushing that component up. It is almost a 1-to-1 ratio, and it's real easy to quickly check. Like when you look at your Garmin, and even without trying to calculate anything, if you have, let's say, 60 minutes of REM, you should be having 45 minutes to 50 minutes of deep sleep, right? Like, you can just be real general and broad about it. The days that things start to go wrong, you can look at it and you go, oh, well, I had 50 minutes of deep sleep and I only had 20 minutes of REM sleep. Oh, crap. Like, okay, tonight I've got to get back on my stuff. I've got to get back on my routine tonight because I lost sleep last night, and I don't want to, like, lose my bank of energy. I want to get right back onto it. And that's a little bit about what I'll talk about in a few seconds here too. Does that answer the question fully? Yep, perfect. Cool. Thanks, Dan. And then 90-day and 30-day programs. This is the meat and potatoes. You pick these habits that you want to incorporate, and one of the things that we have to get out of the mindset of is short challenges. There are short challenges that are helpful. However, 30 days and 90 days, we need to have enough consistent information to our body to make a permanent change in what's called the epigenetics of our body. So in other words, we have our genetic code, then we have the expression of those genetic codes, and that's our current state. So if we've been sitting on the couch for 20 years, our epigenetic state is that we are a fat storage machine, and we don't want to get rid of that fat. If we are a top level performing athlete, we could eat 2 cakes and not gain any weight, right? Because our epigenetic structure is a fat burning machine. And so that's what we have to think about when we think about doing these little habit changes, is we have to consistently do them for 90 days and in 30-day segments. And so there's lots of different strategies you can employ based off of how you deal with habit change. Some people want to pick one habit every 30 days and they keep additive. So the first 30 days, they try to go to bed at the same time. The second 30 days, they go to bed at the same time and they try a little meditation beforehand, and they keep adding that way. Or some people like to just do all 3 habits for 90 days. Either way, the end goal is stay consistent for 90 days and your genetic profile will start to change and adapt, whether it be weight loss, whether it be fitness, whether it be any of those types of things. We have to do things for 90 days minimum. Now, I kept promising, how does this work for me? So, like I said, I was stressed over this summer. I had 6 weeks where I was traveling all over the country. I was going on adventures, and then my father-in-law passed away, and we had to do end-of-life care and pack up his estate. And I came back, and my nervous system was a wreck. And for a whole week, I just couldn't sleep. There was actually 3 nights out of the week where I bottomed out and I had zero REM sleep. And you can see that in the previous week here. This is a week-to-week comparison. And I just, no matter what I did, I couldn't get my sleep back. I was anxious. I was staying up. It was just a horrible period for me. So over the weekend, I did a mega dose of melatonin, and I'm not going to describe that in depth because I don't want, this is like a doctor thing. It's not a recommended, go play out with mega dosing melatonin. But for me, I know that it works. And so this is proof in the pudding of I did 2 days of mega dosing melatonin at a level that I know is successful for me. And the following week, I had a whole week long of effect where my REM sleep increased by 70% and my deep sleep increased by 16%. So it's proof in the pudding that that 2 days of melatonin supplementation for me increased my sleep by that much in a personalized way. And I know that it was successful, and I know that I was back on track, back towards my normal baseline. So that is the power of understanding how to look at this data, how to look at it from a longevity standpoint, where you're looking at the data longitudinally, you're figuring out the long term, and looking at it on the daily to realize, wow, I really need help today. I need to do these extra mitigation techniques to knock me back into where it needs to go. And this is the beauty of data without just looking at your what I would call your basic numbers, like getting one level past the basic numbers of whatever your app shows you. This is the power that we can do. And then the energy bucket, that gives us the perspective of what we actually need. So beforehand, you guys also did a great job of filling out forms with questions. So I'm going to answer some of these questions that were in the pre-populated form. So is there a certain time of day that I should be doing a certain type of activity? And the answer is heck yes. There's actually really strong correlations. In my advanced one-on-one coaching, I have a very robust system where we actually combine CGM data and fitness tracker data and your schedule, your Google Calendar, your emails, everything like that flows into one central data hub. And for one of my entrepreneurs that I was recently working with, we were trying to optimize around how much cardio that individual needed to get the full amount of deep sleep because he had anxiety, he had all sorts of cognitive decline the next day when he wasn't getting his full sleep. And we figured out that he only had to do, I think it was like 45 minutes to 50 minutes of exercise in the morning versus he had to do 120 minutes to 130 minutes of exercise in the afternoon to get the same amount of deep sleep. So this was done as a study of him over 6 months worth of data that we collected. And we could see on days where he worked out before noon, he only needed 45 to 50 minutes to get a deep sleep at night. And days when he worked out in the afternoon, he would have to work all those extra minutes to get the deep sleep that he needed. And so, yes, there's very much a personalized aspect of when we do things, how we do things, and paying attention to that can be very helpful in our longevity.
Quick
Question two.
question.
Yeah.
Dan asks, is this parentheses IE 35.33 in percentage or minutes? Like what are the units?
Oh, that was minutes. Yeah, minutes of
Okay,
exercise. Yep.
got it.
Yeah, so a lot less effort essentially in the morning, and you'd get the same effect as if he had to have a bunch more effort in the afternoon, is really what that comes down to. And as an entrepreneur who schedules his block in 15 minutes time increments, an extra half an hour of working out means it's 2 less meetings for him, right? And so that's a big deal on an ROI for an entrepreneur
I
of
was
knowing
referring
that
to,
optimization.
I was referring to the previous slide, like the
Oh,
first, yeah, right there.
yeah. Which one? Sorry. Oh, yeah, those were minutes. Yep. Yep, of my deep sleep. Yeah, I was horrible the week before. Yep, proof in the pudding that even experts have to go through all of this. Like we're not immune to the stressors of daily life. Yeah, and like I said, there was 2 or 3 days where I had zero REM sleep. I literally couldn't get into my sleep pattern. It was horrible experience. I felt like a zombie that week. Yeah. Anyways, bullet point number 2, how do I emotionally disengage from my results at work when it has such a direct impact on the quality of my life? There's 2 things when I work with my entrepreneurs on this that are very helpful. One is the question of why is it bad that you can't disengage? So some entrepreneurs are just born to constantly think. So I constantly think. I'm constantly thinking about how to better my business, my family, my life. I really care about the patients that I work with. So I'll lose sleep at night with, and I've learned how to work around this, where I have an issue where I wake up at 2 o'clock at night when something's bothering me, but it's also turned into my superpower once I figured out how to use it, where I can stay in a red light and I can journal, and I can actually journal out all my problem solving issues better than during the day. And so I've actually turned it into my superpower by not emotionally disengaging from my work, and I embrace it. So that's one component. Everyone's completely different. If you want to disengage from work, which a lot of people do, and I totally get that, then that is where you have to learn the tactics for you. So maybe that's journaling at the end of the day to make sure that your tasks for the next day are set so that your brain can disconnect. Maybe it's learning how to turn off all the technology around your work trying to ding for you. You know, there's all these different aspects that you can go through from an awareness standpoint to start to disengage, allow your body to decompress and get into the habits. Maybe that is a workout for you. Maybe that's a food for you, something of that nature. Number 3, what are the most impactful biometrics to continuously track with wearables? And what is the most important biometrics to assess medically on a quarterly or yearly basis? This is a really fun conversation because I'm going to give you an answer you probably have not heard of. And it is simply that more information gives you more flexibility to understand how to move forward. And so whatever your time, budget, constraints, all of those sorts of things, the goal right now is to start collecting as much data as possible, whatever you can, and often as you can, because the innovation curve on these aspects, these lifestyle devices, every 3 months, there's groundbreaking innovation that's happening. And data that we're collecting 2 years ago that we thought was useless now suddenly becomes really relevant. So your future self, your 5 years from now, you're going to look back and be like, oh, I'm suffering from this cancer or whatever you may end up getting your life into. And you're going to want the previous 5 years of data, because hopefully what'll happen is that you'll start to see, oh, I'm on my way to cancer and I'm going to cut it off before cancer happens, right? We can start to see these early warning symptoms. The more that we assess data now, the more likely we can change things preemptively in the future. And so this is my big passion with all of this stuff, is that how can we look at our biological age? When I'm working with people one-on-one, we're doing a full scale. So it's $100,000 for a year of one-on-one coaching for 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs with me. Every 3 months, we're getting their biological age, their, all of their inflammation with glycan age, true diagnostics. We're getting a full blood panel of over 100 blood metrics. We're getting as many IoT devices connected as possible, because it's the trend of all of this data that is way more important than the individual data. If you wait until you're 45 for your first blood check, you have no idea if that was, and it's in the normal range. So this is where women get all the time, and men have all the time problems with their testosterone. Women always have problems with their thyroid, is that it's still within the normal range, but when you were in your 30s, it was on one end of the normal range, and now you're in your 40s and it's in the other end of the normal range. And so you still don't get help, but you had no perspective of what your normal was from your 30s. So you have no idea that you were actually going down the wrong path in your 40s. And this is where a lot of chronic diseases get missed, because the current medical system and the current, even the discussion about blood work, is that you wait until something's wrong and then we do something about it. So that's what we want to try to avoid. Of when we empower people, we're empowering them to understand that their body is changing, and it's not from just the classic yes or no if you have a diagnosis or not. So hopefully that answers that question. And then number 4, I put this in here As a fun one, how reliable is HRV for stress indicator resilience? What other wearable metrics indicate stress reliability? The short answer of this is that this will probably be the next webinar because it is a in-depth, complex topic. But if I had to short summarize it, is that there is a mass confusion in the marketplace right now of what the definition of stress is. Half of the people want to talk about stress from mental health. Most of the device companies actually talk about stress as a nervous system balance. And so like when we look at Garmin's body balance, HRV is technically a balance of sympathetic to parasympathetic tone. And there's no right or wrong. There's lots of research showing that we have to find our baseline of this. And when they look at the body battery, they're actually defining stress as the stress of your nervous system, not your mental health. However, most people that buy a Garmin think that, oh, this is my stress of like, they're looking for their stress metric of they're in that meeting and they're trying to correlate if they have stress or not. And there's no real good correlation to mental health stress. And so there's a clear delineation that we have to work through, which is why it deserves the whole webinar on its own. So any other pre-questions about these?
A comment from Jody. She was referencing what you said. She says, or we compare our blood work to the standard American, other
Yeah.
people's results instead of our own baseline or normal.
Yep, that's exactly it. Yeah, we run into all sorts of problems because it's especially like when we look at things like RDAs for nutrition, this is the minimum amount required to not get a disease. And it's like, why would we want to live that way? We live in an amazing first world country. Why don't we optimize instead of just holding on so that we don't get disease? It seems like such a backwards concept.
Yeah.
All right. So before we get into the live Q&A, I do have some bonuses for you guys just for showing up. I do have this energy bucket method much more detailed out, and we are going to be emailing everyone with the replay. So I definitely appreciate everyone coming for this. There's a lot more webinars coming. Definitely send your suggestions, like the HRV one. I think that that's going to be a great one. I love disseminating this type of information and having these types of interactions. So to me, that would be really meaningful to send us information about what else you guys would like to hear about. The Energetic Flow is actually my book that will be coming out probably at the end of this year, beginning of next year, depending on publishing time. I also have to finish my 100-mile race first, which is also the documentary. So once I'm done with my 100-mile race, everyone who's on this webinar will actually get early access to these types of things as content and free, and sending it over to help you on your journey. We will continue to send out emails as well as just information of different components of longevity and energy bucket concepts. So that's really a lot of the fun behind that. But I do want to point out, when I was running my sports medicine clinic, the thing I wish I had the most was community I could relate to, but I couldn't find it. I was lost, like I said, and it was disheartening for me. Out of all the groups that I tried looking into, I felt like I just couldn't relate to a lot of people. So that's why I am extremely excited for the first time in public talking about this. So outside of my private network, I am opening up the Authentiic Explorers membership. And this is all about living fully and thriving endlessly. And it's a community for adventurous dads leveraging longevity in business for a thriving life. And basically, this is everything that I wish that I had when I was going through my deep, dark problems in business. And to me, I'm getting a little bit goosebumpy right now as this is super exciting. I just want people around me that are more like me, that are adventurous. They want to focus on health. They want to focus on leveraging business. And so the group is going to be about supported small group with like-minded dads. And yes, fur babies do count as a dad's. Work groups with experts in AI, operations, and communications. These are the three things that I think give us the most leverage in business, especially AI right now, where we can take over all these processes and streamline things in our businesses. Whether we're a C-suite executive, a founder, it doesn't make a difference. We can incorporate AI in all of our lives. We want to have longevity monthly challenges. So there's a leaderboard component of that portal that I was showing you, where we have sleep challenges, step challenges, adventure challenges, and we are fun friendly competition. I'm a very competitive person, but in a fun, lighthearted kind of way. We're going to have monthly personal insights delivered to you. So we're going to do this work for you. We're going to do the comparative analysis for you. We're going to help you fill your energy bucket, and we're going to show you if it's working for you or not. So the community is really this focused on yourself and focused on community at the same time. There's going to be a digital community to share resources and support you in your roadblocks in business. This is one of those things, especially when I was going through my health issues, I didn't have the cognitive function to even recognize what a roadblock was in front of me. And if I had a support of people who understood me and understood where I was in my business, they would have been able to identify those roadblocks for me and allow me to get past that. We're going to have in real life dinners, adventures, and time dilation retreats. This is really everything that I love to do. So I love to go whitewater rafting. I love to do fire and ice sessions. I love dinners. I love hanging out with people. But all of these are going to be curated with intent and purpose of group of like-minded people who are maybe suffering from the same types of roadblocks, certain people who have been there and done that. That way we can have a whole chain of support. And then last but not least, the annual Yak Fest Summit. This is something that I'm extremely happy for, where Dr. Dave is going to put on his grilling hat. I love grilling. And I'm going to cook a whole yak, and it's going to be a family event. We're going to thank the families for their support, and we're going to support the other part of the family and pamper them a little bit while we eat some yak, and it's going to be a fun adventure. So the ROI that I would have had from this type of group would have been my health, which is priceless, but it would have added a few $1,000,000. I wouldn't have had to close down my office, and I wouldn't have had to stop doing all the amazing sports medicine that I was doing. A few AI integrations away from not having to pay thousands to subcontractors. This is something that I've already been helping businesses do on the back end. Through AI, we're at this point now where things that you need, Fivers and those sorts of little subcontractors for, AI is now able to replace a lot of this aspect. So we're talking saving thousands of dollars in subcontractors in our businesses, and you're only one roadblock away from energetic flow and growing. This is one of the biggest things that I've learned, especially working with high-end athletes and high-end high-performance CEOs, is that it's always just one little roadblock away. There's this aspect of figuring out what that is, getting over that, and it's suddenly like this faucet gets turned on and everything starts to grow. So a yearly membership would normally be $8,500, but this is the first time, like I said, I'm super excited to announce this to the general public and not just my private audience of people that I know. So we're doing it as a special adventure price for the first 10 people of $4,250. There's going to be an application link in the chat, which will also go out in email afterwards. And so if this is something that you're interested in, you definitely can fill out that link. And it's an application that I'm actually going to interview you to make sure that you're a good fit, because this is a highly curated membership where we actually really want to make sure that it's supportive and the right fit for everyone. And with that, I want to thank you. So this is my fun little Fallout picture of my personal insight engine. I really enjoy this. This is everything that I try to do is AI created. So this is what AI thought of when I put all of my information about the membership in. This is the image that it created, which was really fun. But now we're going to open it up to more Q&A time.
Awesome.
And I can pop up my
Thanks,
chat
Dave.
here a little
Yeah,
bit.
there's been
Oops.
a bunch that have come through, and yeah, we'll open up to anybody that wants to just go off of mute and throw any questions, whether it was covered by Dave or not. You can definitely go there with this human, but yeah, feel free to ask away.
And I really tried to make this as simple as possible, but I know it's really complex for if you've never come across this information before. So don't hesitate to, every question is really like, if you feel like, if you think it's too basic of a question and you don't want to ask it, please just ask it, because I can guarantee you almost everyone needs to hear it.
Hey, Dave.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Chance here. What's up,
Oh,
buddy?
yeah, perfect.
How you doing? I might have missed it. What was the metric that was the most important?
Oh, you missed it. Yep. And that's an insider secret. Yeah. So
Gotta
the
rewatch it.
yeah, you'll get the replay definitely, and it'll go over everything. But the two big ones, resting heart rate and deep sleep to REM sleep ratio.
Okay.
And so
Gotcha.
resting heart rate, again, being when we're at sleep, not the general resting heart rate for during the day, but this is our nighttime resting heart rate.
Gotcha. Which is something I don't know. I always take my watch off. So
Yeah, and that's an issue. So this is a great point too. Like I said, there's so much information around this. Form factor is everything. So I wear a clunky Garmin watch, and at nighttime, in order for it to be comfortable and not to spray my eyes with the LED lights, I have to tighten it down on my wrist, and that's how I sleep better. So there's these little tips and tricks that way. Other people prefer to use the rings. So there's Aura Ring, Samsung just launched their ring, and there's a ring called Ultra Human. These all have just nice form factors where if you're used to wearing a ring, you can wear that at night. I have lots of patients that actually wear both. So they wear the ring at night and then they wear their watches during activities, because activities are generally tend to be tracked better with chest straps and those sorts of things.
gotcha. Okay. And another question for you. The light that hits your arm that checks for your heart rate and all that jazz,
Yeah.
what exactly is that? Is there any downsides in the future of that light?
Yeah, so I call it there's very of course there's all this aspect that we could get into of, our Wi-Fi's and things of that nature, our lasers going into us. There's all those aspects. I think the short answer from my perspective is that there's way exponentially more good that comes out of it for if you are sensitive. Some people are sensitive to light, right? And so there is an aspect that there is these little LEDs that are going into your body, and everything. Your cell phone around you has EMF. We're electric beams. There's all an energetic flow around these things that, based off of your own comfort level, that you can think about. So yes, there are people who do want to detach from devices. The only issue that I have with that then is that you don't know when things are going wrong. And so to me, it's more important to know the data around me than it is for potential risks of devices around me.
Gotcha. Cool. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, I was curious, and I had a couple of friends. One of them is a medical doctor, and he was asking about the, EMF exposure from wearables. And so, I mean, it doesn't look like there's any evidence to show, any low, like it's such low level EMF exposure from what I found. I don't know if you found anything different, Dave, but it
The
seems
way,
like,
the
yeah.
way that I like to think about this is that we need to detach from thinking of research projects in the general public, because what ends up happening in the research is that they narrow it down into a tiny little thing and they forget of the complex system. Is that everything actually has a magnetism about it, everything, depending on where you are in the world and depending on how much Wi-Fi is around you. And are you corded into your Wi-Fi? You can even get into electrical wires. The whole concept of electrical wires is there's magnetic, the physics of it is that there's a circling of the electrons and it creates a magnetism. And so all of these things around us are affecting us at all times. And so the principle that I like to think about is that if our bucket is empty, a small amount of EMF, a small amount of things can set us off the edge. If our bucket is full, those things don't bother us. It's a perspective in our body of that one thing. When you hear about the one thing that broke the camel's back, right? The needle in the haystack, all these concepts, when we put it in perspective of ourselves, if our bucket is full, those things will not affect us. When our bucket is empty, those things have a big effect on us. Which is when a lot of people that I've worked with that severe autoimmune and things of that nature where they are bedridden, then we do start talking about that stuff, like how can we get the bed away from the walls so that the wires running through the walls aren't affecting them? How do there's Faraday cages, there's all sorts of stuff that if people are sensitive to that and their bucket's empty, they have to take drastic measures in all aspects. So, yeah.
Hi Dave, thank you for this great presentation. And I would like to ask, should we follow these metrics with eating habits and supplementary intaking? For example, I am intaking magnesium for nights after the exercises, and it really helps for resting heart rate and I think for the sleep also.
Very much so. Yeah. And everything is a self-experiment. And once you start to learn what works for you, especially magnesium glycinate, I'm a huge fan of that. I actually personally megadose magnesium as well because of my nervous system. I actually found out I have a condition called calcium shell disease, which actually leaches the magnesium and calcium out of my nervous system, which was the original, all the way back in my story. This is what actually had happened to me. So taking magnesium in a personalized level, always comparing and contrasting to when you don't take it. And so this gives us a real world effect of watching that data in minute little experiments for ourselves, and also having the awareness of, oh, if I'm in a peak training week, people will typically like periodize their workouts. When I'm in my peak week, I know I need to take twice as much magnesium, right? Having that type of awareness when we think of those sorts of things, it's not just a constant. Our body is never constant in anything that it does. It always has these cycles, and paying attention to those and data really helps us understand that. So yeah, that's a great point.
How about the biomarkers? What will be the optimum frequency for calculating the blood test or the other tests? Also, these biomarkers should align with these metrics also. It's a bit complicated, I think,
Yeah,
when we consider all the things.
Yep, it's extremely complicated, and this is why people like me, the crazy people on the back end, are creating AIs to actually try to understand fitness tracker data with biomarkers and epigenetics. I think we have to have the whole conversation, because we have to know what our genetics are producing in our body, that if we're even lacking, like I have MTHFR homozygous or heterozygous, so I only have a 40% operational MTHFR enzyme capacity, which means I don't pump out as many enzymes, right? So then what is my blood work around CRP, homocysteine, and those sorts of things? And then what is my current fitness tracker? We have to have this whole thing in order to tell the actual story. And this is why I'm so excited for AI, is that it's virtually impossible for the human brain to comprehend this, because we need to have complex data structures to really fully understand that part of it. In the meantime, to answer your actual question, quarterly is optimal from a blood work standpoint, because that's enough time that in these 90-day segments, we can perform different things and we can see changes in our homocysteine levels or inflammatory cascades and things of that nature to know if we're going on the right track, especially if we're doing something like TRT therapy or any of the hormone optimization things. You want to try to get as much regular data as possible, because you can have massive swings and fluctuations. We commonly think of daily swings. It's really easy for us to know that, cortisol and testosterone and things like that, like there's times where it's higher during the day. We actually have yearly rhythms as well, where winter times, our testosterone may be at a completely different level than summer times. And throughout taking quarterly blood work over a long term of 4 or 5 years, we're going to start learning that. And then when something starts to go wrong, we have all this previous data that we can compare and contrast to, that, oh, I'm suddenly getting sick. It's wintertime. I know my wintertime stats are normally this. And what is my comparative now?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Yeah.
For people in their late 70s and 80s, are there any other metrics that they should be looking at or not looking at?
Yeah. So it's actually doesn't matter about your age. Every day is a great start to this. And the beauty of this is that there can be immediate results when you start looking at this type of stuff, especially as we do start to age. We can create a lot of impact right away. And so look at those charts to figure out where you're at in those charts. If you go back through the replay,
I did.
Yeah, perfect. You'll be able to figure out where you're at, where you want to go,
I'm
and then
great.
start to take steps, and they will have immediate action.
Yeah.
Even in the worst case scenarios of people that are on their deathbed, I've helped people do, and this is always a conversation of quantity of life versus quality of life. I've helped a lot of people at the end stage of their life, especially with cancer and different things that people were struggling with. And to me, I've always been a quality of life kind of person. There's things every single day in every single situation that you can do to improve your quality of life. And it doesn't matter what the current situation is. So, as a great example, my dad, he had had a previous neck fusion, and 2 weeks after he retired, he was in a hotel room and he tripped on the blanket on the floor, hit his head up against the wall, and had a spinal cord fracture. And he had central cord syndrome, and he was a complete quadriplegic for 6 months. And during that time, I went in and I did all sorts of neuro rehab of stimulation and petting him with dog toys, believe it or not, and all sorts of crazy stuff that I actually had to fight off the doctors to like get in there and work on him. They were trying to refuse me to go in there. But it was this immediate reaction of like when I would brush his back with the dog toys, he could sit up straight. And so it's just like there's always something that can be done to improve the quality of life. And because of all of that, he was able to get back 85% of his function. And he actually helped raise my kids and everything of that nature. Is an amazing success story.
Yeah. My resting heart rate's about 53, 54.
Okay.
But what I see around me are men in my age group that are just, well, they're just not in a good place. And
Yeah.
I try and reach them and talk to them, but they think I'm crazy. And it's really difficult to reach them. And I would like to be able to do that, get a bunch of old guys and
Yeah.
old girls on a Zoom call with someone like you to
Well,
educate them.
this is a beautiful statement in that we can all do our part. Is that really just connection is one of the biggest things, is that people need to see other people be successful. So you can be a leader and you can say to your small group of friends, like, hey, I want to get together. The thing about human psychology around this is that people can't be told what to do. And we know this very strongly through research, is that we can't tell them to get healthy. What we can do is one of two things. We can lead by example and hope that they follow, or we can probe them with questions to make them question their own reality, but they can't be too deep of probing. We can't be too far off of the center of where they're at. So if someone is chair ridden, as an example, and they just sit and watch Jeopardy all day long, we can go up to them and we can say, during Jeopardy time, say, hey, can I come over? And you go over there and you say, man, let's go for a walk around the kitchen over here. Let's just get outside for a second. And just those little probing questions like that make them, like, and when they're doing it, like, hey, how does this feel? And so it's that community support that helps take action in people. And when it gets to more severe diseases, there are a couple of other tactics, but I think that would be, I could talk for a few hours on that as well. So we'll leave that for another time, but just start with reaching out. Everyone can do this. Everyone can send a friendly message of just saying, hi, I'm thinking of you. There doesn't have to be an intent of it. And just that act alone, this is actually why I call Authentic with two eyes. The one eye is if you take care of yourself, you're going to inspire the next person. And just these simple little acts of community will inspire the next layer of people, and then that'll inspire the next layer of people. So it really is an infectious type of thing.
I like it.
Without trying to force the info down, like hopping on a webinar with someone, if they're already denial, like hopping on a webinar isn't going to do anything. Unfortunately, you're already open to receive the information and they're not. And so this is the classic, like, cognitive bias that, let's just say in politics, of my research proves your research wrong, right? It never works.
The biggest disease I see, I swim a lot. I swim every day. is excessive adipose buildup.
Oh, yep.
And then it's like, so they'll start to exercise in their 60s being 100 pounds overweight. And
Yep.
they struggle with it, they get hurt, and
Well, and
it breaks my heart to see that. It really
that's
does.
why personalization is so key to all of this, and biometrics can really help with this. So if we look at something as basic as a step count, we have to gain perspective into what is my normal step count and how can I just go 5% above that. And we need to think long term, and that's why I like the 90-day thought process, is that everyone wants to do a step challenge and in 10 days go from 600 steps a day to 10,000 steps a day. And the body just, if you spent 30 years at 600 steps, you're just not going to be able to handle 10,000 steps, even though we know research has proven that it's helpful. Is that 1,000 steps is going to be way more beneficial for that person than 600 steps, right? And so how can we increment people into and think long term of, oh, I've got another 10 years of life. I've got plenty of time to work on my health. And by the way, the journey is more important than the destination. The journey is the magic of, if I start to move every day, I start to feel better every day. And I really, truly am a believer that movement is one of the cornerstones of getting healthy. It doesn't matter the actual weight, but getting people moving will start that process. And then eventually, it may take them 5 to 10 years, but eventually they'll start to actually lose weight.
Absolutely, I agree. Move. You have to keep moving.
Yeah.
So there it is.
Yeah, perfect.
It's not rocket science for sure.
Yep. Yeah, that's actually another point. I love this thought process of that rocket science statement. You know, in the beginning of this webinar, I talked about how the general information has just probably done just as much harm to society than anything, is that it over sensationalizes things to people and it makes people feel bad, because right now our culture is to say research says 10,000 steps is healthy for you, and you look at yourself and you know that you're not taking 10,000 steps and you automatically feel bad about it. And so then you go do your 10 days of trying to get that step count up and you don't do it and you start to feel bad and your joints start to hurt and you're like, well, I'm never going to be able to do it anyways. And so they feel bad and then they just stop. And this is one of the big harms with generalized content that is not personalized to an individual.
You know, people ask me all the time what I do. How do I stay in shape? Well, not everybody can swim, you know, not everybody's got a pool. So I always tell them, you find something you like to do, something that you can
Yep.
do. You do that every day.
Yeah.
And just movement could be the answer for
Yep.
a lot of these guys, you know.
In my energy bucket, the way that I break that out, and so I didn't show it for the sake of time in this webinar, but I break each of those categories out into 4 different categories. And in the movement category, there's fun and recreation. There's a movement category like walking and yoga, and then there's heavy lifting and cardio. And we have to have the balance of those 4 things. So we have to have playtime. We have to have community and things that we enjoy doing in order to stimulate the fun aspect of keeping moving. And then we need about 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardio. At least once a week, we need to lift something heavy. So that even can be just picking up the end of your couch, but we're stimulating an endorphin response from it. And then the movement side of it is just to keep your joints healthy. This is foam rolling, massage, vibration therapy, like yoga, gentle stretching, you know, all of that type of stuff as some sort of daily routine to keep that energy bucket full. Yep.
There you go. Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got about 5 minutes left. Anybody have any other questions? Some great ones.
Yeah, this is what I love about this. This is the fun time for me.
Yeah, wow.
Let's double check. Yeah, a couple of thank yous in the chat. Yeah, keep your buckets full, y'all. Someone's from the South. They got the y'all going. Now that I've moved to Texas, I'm slipping into those statements as well. Perfect. Yeah, I think, yep, I think we got everything out of the chat. Perfect.
Yep,
Cool.
I got a couple texts that people want to get the recording as well that weren't able to make it. So we can
Yeah.
send it out after for sure.
Recording will be going out with the energy bucket guide, and yeah, lots more information to come. I definitely thank everyone for being on here, and I think we'll just call it a wrap as the moments of silence. But I definitely appreciate everyone, and for sure reach out if you're interested in that men's group. Please apply through the link. If you're interested in just getting more content, just don't unsubscribe. Stay subscribed to the email. Perfect.
Everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Dr.
very
Dave.
much,
Appreciate
everyone.
ya. You guys everyone have a great weekend.